Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. Man, it feels like it's earlier in the week, but I guess that's what happens when we start a little bit off with the Memorial Day Monday. It's Wednesday. It's May the 28th. We're going to talk today about the United States versus communism. Or if you were to go and ask the AI chat that's out there, is Venezuela a communist country? They would say, no, it has elements of socialism. I got kind of interested in this because there's this horrific story out of Grapevine, Texas, Grapevine Lake. It's a lake that I grew up hanging out on. And there was a young girl who was killed by an illegal alien with a jet ski. With a freaking jet ski. And it made me sit down and ask my wife this morning. I said, when was the last time you were on a jet ski? Because I'll tell you what, I haven't been on a jet ski in a very long time. Got a lot going on in my life. I'm out there trying to raise a family, make a living. Maybe make the world a better place if I can in the little areas that I don't have time for jet skis. Jet skis are a thing that the wealthy and that the maybe people who have leisure time, maybe some young people. Why does an illegal alien who theoretically came here because they were looking for economic opportunity and wanted to work hard, a young person, kill another young person with a jet ski? That's my question. And then I found another story about a Somali man who got into a shooting with a police officer, and the Somali man's father was visiting. He was on vacation to the United States, but the Somali man was a refugee. How can you have someone on vacation in the United States when the person that they're visiting is a refugee? And then the person that's visiting is going to be able to go back home. Doesn't that undermine the entirety of the argument that these people need to be here? So I wanted to look into some of that. Also wanted to welcome Jake Tapper to the Kyle Seraphin skeptic clan here. Folks have certainly realized that if you've been lying for your entire career and making millions of dollars off it, maybe you should get some sources. Maybe you should actually ask some questions and see if there's any honesty behind the things that you're reporting. So the media is now having this moment where it's self-reflective. And so we've got a little discussion about sort of the losing posture that Democrats have taken, not because I said it and not because you said it, but because the New York Times is now doing a self-assessment and realizing they're not going to get anybody to vote their way because the things they're saying are crazy. And then lastly, I have an Epstein file revelation, which we may actually lead with relatively early. We're going to do all those things and more. So that's what the program is going to involve for today. Before we get started, I want to say thanks to my friends over at Patriot Protect. If you guys saw the interview we did with the founder, one of the co-founders, Skip has a lot to say about this. It's worth your time to understand the nature of the threat. One of them is another communist country, China. They've spent significant resources building up DeepSeek and other AI platforms that scrape data off the internet, compile them. They are constantly attempting to do cyber attacks on U.S. government infrastructure and also on private industry. And then they dump millions of highly sensitive American records onto the dark web, including your name, your email address, your relatives, your phone numbers, your work history, personal details that only, maybe you and some family members might know. And it helps people either impersonate you or to pretend that they are a company that is reputable and get more information from you to scam you out of your own additional data. If you didn't think you're affected, think again. DeepSeek has gathered information without your permission, without your knowledge, and likely has leaked it without your understanding out there in the world. It's not just a password leak. We're talking about information that criminals will use to come and hijack your accounts, destroy your finances, or worse. A little bit more on the finance thing in a little bit. You can check out their blackout service, which allows you to search the dark web, find out if your information has been leaked, and then try to do the mop up there. And it's pretty inexpensive. It's like less than $8 a month. This is something that you can invest in as a preemptive, because it's not really an if, it's just a when And the question is, how bad will it be? Their search and destroy protocol wipes your protocol, your personal information, that is, off all these data broker sites that are out there, constantly monitoring for new threats. And the key is to keep your name out of the pile that scammers are looking for. Check them out at patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Again, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Link is in the show descriptions. Check them out for sure. If you're not doing this service, find one. This is just the one that we use in our household, and we appreciate their support here. Let's dive into today. We're going to talk a little bit about money right now, first, right off the bat, too. So there's this kind of ongoing, maybe it's just in my common knowledge that Americans in general across the board are unable to survive a financial emergency of $400 or more. And I don't know where I got that. I just remember reading headlines on it and thinking it was true. So I did a couple searches this morning, and I started off right there. And of course, that has something to do with being scammed. If you get scammed out of more than $400, and by the way, the target is always going to be more than $400. Even on the Indian reservations I used to work, the numbers were in the several hundreds, like $700, $800, $900, $1,000 when they would try to do what they call virtual kidnappings and so on. So the scams are never going to be for small amounts of money. And I saw this headline today on CBS's main page on their Money Watch section. It says, do you have the top predictor for financial well-being? And they went to Vanguard Research, which is a big investment company. They're kind of like a BlackRock type thing. They take a lot of people. A lot of people put their money in there. They have high yield accounts and so on. It's a decent sort of mutual fund situation. Vanguard Research says the following. It doesn't take $1 million to achieve the top predictor of financial well-being. According to new research from Vanguard, it's something far more attainable. Socking away at least $2,000 in an emergency savings account. They did a survey of 12,000 Vanguard investors and found that it's not assets or income that are associated with high levels of financial well-being. It's rather an emergency savings account of $2,000 or more. And I think that's actually really relevant to the folks that are listening to this program. If you guys understand our sort of prepare or repair attitude, one of the things that brings you a little bit of peace of mind is having a cushion. That's not surprising. You might want to have emergency food. You might want to have ammunition. You might want to have a skill set. The one thing I think is mostly overlooked is your health. We'll talk a little bit about that later on too. But the idea that you should have $2,000 in emergency savings. When you were growing up, your parents probably called it a rainy day fund, some money you put away for a rainy day. I don't know what a rainy day is. Maybe that's the day that you find out that the roof leaks in your house and that you have a financial problem that you have to solve with some money. $2,000 is rated higher. Having $2,000 in reserve is rated higher than having an income over $500,000 or having assets over $1 million. It was the highest rated financial cushion, not high income, not significant assets. And so that made me start thinking, well, how many people in America are actually in that situation? And unfortunately, the answer is not very many. So this is something that you should probably be working on. If you are not in that situation right now, figure out where you can cut in order to make sure that you don't have this problem rear its head. It's never going to be like, oh, I don't have $2,000 this morning, so I'm really worried about it. It's like, okay, well, I better work towards that goal. I started working towards that when I was probably 26, maybe 25, something to that effect. When I realized I had no money, I wanted to not ever have that situation again. It only takes one time of being in that to realize how awful it is and how powerless it makes you feel. So another story from CBS, this one goes back to January of this year. It says most Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. Isn't it funny? Like I said, the number in my head was 400. And then after all the Biden inflation, it's $1,000. That actually doesn't surprise me even a little bit. I'm seeing the question in the chat. Why is it better to have $2,000 laying around than $500,000 in income? The answer is because most people who make that kind of money, and having lived in Northern Virginia where people had, $1 million homes and they had no net worth after it was all said and done because they had loan debts for their kids and they had loan debts for their own academic situations. They'd spent tons of money on either Ivy League schools or they had gone into debt, become professionals, lawyers and doctors and so on. They had expensive vehicles that cost them a significant amount, both in interest and on monthly payments. If your cash flow is that you don't have a reserve of a few dollars, then any sort of thing, no matter how much money you make, if you're spending every penny that comes in the door, you're screwed. Most Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. And that seems like something that people should be able to do, whether it's a busted refrigerator, it says car trouble, medical issues, unexpected costs are part of life, but these routine curveballs often spell serious financial trouble for Americans. That's something that I realized that the suspendables all have in common. Every single one of us had a financial stability. Not because we made a lot of money. You don't make a ton of money working in the government. But we realized that in order to be self-reliant, in order to say no when somebody asks you to do something illegal, immoral, or unethical, you actually have to have the ability to float for a period of time onward. And you might have to make some really hard decisions. And so that seems relevant to me, that our country, in this sort of addiction to comfort and to immediate and instant gratification and the inability to put things away, savings accounts used to be a measure of your financial health. And we've kind of stopped doing that. And isn't it interesting? As that's happened, you don't see your savings account making money anymore. No, just for some reason that's bothered me. Because when I was a kid, you could actually put money into a savings account and see a reasonable rate of return. You know, it was like a whole number, and the number was more than 2 or 3%. It didn't used to be that you put your money in and it just sat there and stagnated, and in fact maybe went backwards because inflation was outpacing the rate at which you were being paid to save it. And it makes me wonder if some of this stuff is actually intentional. Again, it doesn't take that much money. How many Americans have less than $500 in savings? Nearly half. So it puts a lot of people in a position where they're unable to say no, and they have to just accept what's coming their way, whether they agree with it or not. And that thing may be any number of questionable decisions. It might be a questionable decisions like go enforce these COVID restrictions on this church as a cop. It might be put on this mask. And if that's the only way you're going to be able to walk in the store because you didn't have enough food saved up that you could actually say, I'm going to wait this one out for a couple of days. We just did a Sunday sit down with Matthew Strickland, and he made a decision in his restaurant. And he said, I might lose everything I have, but I have a 6-figure amount of money in my bank account, and I'm going to fight with every penny that I have to go forward. Our palate cleanse is going to be about that mindset, that the truth does not ever compromise with lies. And I think that's something that we need to sort of get our minds around. I think it's really important. And a lot of this stuff, again, goes back to COVID. It continues to go back to COVID. So I'm seeing a story today about the CDC. And of course, it's about COVID. And the people that the political left is crying most about tend to be those that are upsetting the status quo. You know who's not upsetting the status quo? Are investigators that were supposed to go find criminal malfeasance within the government. Why has that not happened yet? At this point in time, the Biden administration had locked up 500 Trump supporters who were at January 6th. Many of them had just been involved in walking, things that would never be investigated by the FBI. And we are in May, and within a few months of Biden's first year in office, just a few months from here, we had a disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, and then we had a massive pushback attempting to force private businesses through OSHA and government mandates, and then the federal government through unlawful, unconstitutional vaccine requirements to be able to hold your job. Those all happened in the first 9 months of the Biden's administration, right? It all comes back to some of this tyrannical stuff that we saw in the last 5 years. So this story also hits home. The CDC is they're ending the recommendation, rather, of COVID vaccines for healthy kids and pregnant women. And by the way, that should also include all healthy people in general. We're seeing this scaremongering pop up that there's this new variant. We covered it yesterday a little bit. How interesting. It's all about a recommendation and it can immediately be recommended. Why is that? They have more data now than they did then, and it should have been that they reserved judgment and reserved any one recommendation, 2 mandates until they had the data. And if the data now shows that they don't need it, isn't that interesting? It was always made up. It was always just a push for control and to see what it was that you would comply with. Do you know how you can know whether you're going to comply or not? If you can afford not to. I saw some folks in the chat talk about FU money. I had a buddy send me an article about FU money the other day. FU money is not $1 million in the bank. It's not $5 million in an annuity. FU money is such that if someone comes to you and says, I need you to do this, and by the way, if not, you're going to pay some sort of consequence. Your financial security is going to be upset, and you have the ability to say FU. Some of you have seen behind the books or seen behind the paywall what we do here at this little podcast. And this is what I do. This is my full-time job. I get up in the morning and I put it together and I'm out there broadcasting to you. So I opened up the books because I love transparency and I'm not scared of it. And I showed folks over on Locals what we make over on places like Rumble and what we make on YouTube. And I told you what I charge for an ad. And all of those things are to say that there's some transparency in that. And it's not a ton of money, but it's enough because the other decisions I've made in my life are all about FU, to the point where when the federal government came and told me that we were going to go do something that was egregious to my personal instinct, I said no. And then I also brought things forward, showing that this kind of malfeasance doesn't happen because people are evil. It happens because people are unable to say no. Let's read this story here. The Center for Disease Control, which many of us lost our faith in. And by the way, this is where the fight against communism happens. It used to be that we had an external enemy. We looked out and we saw a USSR. We saw a Chinese Communist Party and we said, that is communism and we are not. And therefore, we're the good guys. Red, white, and blue America. That's what we're all about. But there's some kind of ugly fight that's going on where when your institutions are captured and they are going to push the things out there, our American society is built on a handful of institutions that have slowly and maybe in the last couple of years more aggressively lost the faith of the people that are supposed to trust them. And here's one example, the CDC. They're no longer recommending routine COVID shots. Again, the question should always be, when did you stop taking the booster and why? I want the COVIDians to answer that question. And I don't want it to be mean. I want you to ask your loved ones that didn't agree with you in 2021, in 2022, that said that you couldn't come hang out with them, that said they wouldn't come to your house because you didn't get the shot. Or maybe you did get the shot, but some family member had some issue with it. And you now think that there's a problem. When did you stop getting boosters and why? And why is the CDC able to make this recommendation? They're no longer going to make the routine recommendation for healthy children and pregnant women, people who were never affected of it. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Of course, this is a crying example of how when you are effective, the left will be mad at you. We're one step closer to realizing POTUS's promise to make America healthy again, he said in an X post. He said they wouldn't be able to recommend it. But it was unclear who would qualify. The CDC lists pregnancy as a condition that puts people at high risk for COVID complications. Based on what? By the way, my wife was around me in November, December when I had COVID for the first time. And she was pregnant and didn't even come down with it. Like, I lost my sense of smell. I shook like a leaf. I had a high fever. This is like the original alpha outbreak of COVID. Nothing going on there. Then they go on to try to attack Kennedy, saying that this is coming from NBC News. Kennedy has a long history of opposition to a variety of vaccines, including the COVID shot. In 2021, he filed a citizen petition that said that the FDA should revoke the authorization for the vaccines. He described it as the deadliest vaccine that was ever made. Kennedy had some things to say about this stuff very recently. He sat down on a podcast, and he's talking about why we don't have faith in institutions. And it's because those institutions, because they don't have FU money either, apparently, or maybe they want to gather it up, they've decided to sell themselves out. This is a truly unsettling clip because people used to be able to go to medical journals and say, at least science is working on the problem and we can trust that the findings are going to be published. And that's apparently not the case anymore. And that's not surprising to any of us that lived through 2021. I want you to listen to it. It's a longer clip than normal. But what RFK Jr. has to say here shakes all of it. It shakes the institution that people used to trust. And I think that that's one of many institutions that we now don't trust. And I'm going to kind of lay out some more of them.
And if you know there's going to be no effort at replicating your study, you have a huge incentive to change.
Oh, no question.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to devote probably 20% of NIH's budget to replication. Every study has to be replicated.
Wow.
We're going to publish the peer review for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to stop publishing in Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, and those other journals because they're all corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And even the heads of those journals, like Marsh Angle, who for 20 years was the head of the New England Journal of Medicine, says that we no longer are a science journal. We are a vessel for pharmaceutical propaganda.
No kidding.
Because
Wow.
they control the journals. They buy the preprints, right? And they find out if you want to publish in a journal, you have to pay $10,000 to get the study published. So the pharmaceutical company concocts a study that shows the outcome that they want, that statins work, or that SSRIs work, and then they'll publish that.
Sing
They
my
pay to get
language.
that published.
Yeah.
And they order reprints from the journal. The reprints, as you know, it's a 5 or 6 page document that has the logo of the journal on it. They sell them for enormous profits, and then they give them to the pharmaceutical reps. The hot-looking girls and hot-looking guys who go to the doctor's office, take them out to lunch, give them the preprint and say this product works. If why don't you prescribe it 500 times during the next month, and then I'll be back here to see you, right? With all these kind of implied promises of what's going to happen. And that's how this system works.
That is just astounding.
And so what we're going to do is change the system and say you can't, Richard Horton, who was the head of the Lancet,
Mm-hmm.
who really disgraced himself during COVID with the Lancet letter and all this.
I remember.
But he says the same thing. He says, we are no longer science journals. We are about promoting pharmaceutical products, and that's what we do. So unless these journals change dramatically, we are going to stop NIH scientists from publishing there, and we're going to create our own journals in-house in each of the institutes.
And they will become the preeminent journals.
And they're going to become the preeminent journals. Because if you get NIH funding, it is anointing you as a good, legitimate scientist.
Okay. Couple of things are kind of really scary. Number one, what he just said is that it's a pay-to-play scheme in the same way that you'd be concerned about a pay-to-play propaganda media outlet, maybe paying for access, maybe giving people, either insider information or paying them through a bunch of advertisements. Let's say you ran a bunch of political ads and then you also got favorable coverage because God forbid we upset any of our political advertisers. That's troubling. I also heard something as a warning in there. He said that we're going to turn around and we're going to have the government establish their own version of journals, which is fine as long as you can trust the government. You can immediately see where that might go wrong, right? Am I the only one who sees that as an issue? It's funny. When you take people who are Democrats their whole life and you take them away from the Democrat Party and you say now they're independents and they're working on behalf of the MAGA people and all this kind of thing, and they care about America healthy and America first and all this, they still think that government is the solution. It's just going to change the way that the power dynamic works. Now the power dynamic is going to be in the hands of the government. That's probably actually worse in the long run. Maybe in a short term, we'll have a little bit of faith, but every one of our institutions ends up going the wrong route. They all go the wrong way from what I can tell. And they all eventually make bad decisions that serve their own interests. I immediately see the issue. But the revelation that there's a pay to play, that it's $10,000 just to get your name in there. And did you hear about the reprints? The idea? They reprint the entire journal with their own logo and their own custom cover, and then they walk in and use it as a sales tool. That is no longer a scientific journal. That is no longer a real peer-reviewed product. And so they've undermined the entire basis of everything that we used to be able to trust in those situations, which is that people would care about science for its own sake. The entire idea of putting government money behind it was that there was no outcome required. It's like, go do the experiment, whatever the cost is, it's not going to cost you anything. You're not a private company. You work at a university. You work in a research area. And the results are the results. In other words, the answer, the sort of like journey is the reward attitude. That's the way that our government is supposed to work. That's why our institutions don't serve us any longer. If the journey is the reward and if the process is the goal, then you're never going to have a DOJ and an FBI that goes out there looking for convictions. They're going to look for fairness. But that's not where we're at right now. If you had a scientific community where the journey is the reward and learning that something doesn't work is in fact also celebrated because now you've found one of the avenues you can close off and you can work on the rest of the remaining ones, then that would be great. But that's not what it is. They want results. They want that private answer. And so the scary thing is that you turn it over to the government. And the more you get the government involved, the closer you get to things like socialism and communism, where the government is your answer. This is a delicate balance. And right now we are out of balance. I'm going to show you there's a media push right now to make somebody else a little bit more credible because they're suddenly speaking from a minor nugget of truth. I don't think we should ever listen to these people again. We should always be skeptics. You should be a skeptic of the things that I'm sharing with you. You should fact check it. You should go out there and find out, does it jibe with your experience and the reality? Can you find alternative sources that also say the same thing? Has your cumulative body of knowledge as a human being, does it actually look? Have you seen body language indicators that show honesty and transparency? This is the stuff that you need to be doing. You should be evaluating all of your sources critically, especially the ones you want to believe. I saw people saying in our chat, love RFK Jr. He's doing a great job. Okay. You should be checking him aggressively. Anybody that you think is doing a great job is someone that is worthy of your scrutiny. And if they are actually able to hold on to your support, it should be because they survive scrutiny, not because you don't ask any questions. I'm going to tell you something about a little group here. One of the things we talked about earlier about is having that money. The other thing is having resources, whether it be ammunition or food or so on. I want to tell you about a Chinese and or communist threat, which, by the way, it's not just in the cyber field. We're going to go ahead and plug our friends over at My Patriot Supply. And they're one of the reasons why I actually felt really okay about going into this election, whether or not we were going to have it at the end of last year. I'll tell you more about that in a sec here. Why do we have double? We have double. 1 second here. That's not supposed to happen. I've got double My Patriot Supply stuff going on. That's not supposed to. There we go. All right, so it's Prepare Like Kyle. So we had a bit of a Memorial Day special, and we had a different website we sent you to. Preparelikekyle.com is the way you go back right now. The thing that they're promoting is the 30-day emergency food kit with 4 additional 72-hour food kits. It comes down to a little bit less than $6 a day for an adult to be able to survive for about 42 days. That's not a bad idea. There's something that's been happening in the United States with the farmland that doesn't get a lot of attention. This is Chinese, whether they're buying up all of our bio data from 23andMe, whether they're going out there and hacking you guys, or whether they're buying thousands or hundreds of thousands of acres of U.S. farmland and taking control of the supply chain like fertilizer and feed and farming equipment and so on. It's pretty clear that their grip on global food production is something that they want to have access to. Why? Because they can squeeze us. Because you can't say no. We trust My Patriot Supply here. Like I said, it's the most cost-effective per calorie. They're also the largest emergency food preparedness company in America. You can get their 4-week emergency food kit right now. That's going to be 30 days. Plus, you get 4 free 72-hour kits, which you can either practice with or just stash in other places. You get them absolutely free when you go there. It's, again, preparelikekyle.com. It's the first option when you go ahead and visit the website. You get 4 weeks of meals that can last for up to 25 years in storage, 2,000 calories a day, fast, free shipping. They show up right away. You can't control what's going on in the outside world, so the only thing you can do is prepare yourself. Again, it's preparelikekyle.com. Again, preparelikekyle.com, and our link stays in the show description. As you see, there's kind of a theme here. Financial security, food security, your health, making sure that you maintain these things. All of these things are all about security. And a lot of it is because we lost trust in these folks, in the institutions. We used to believe that people would tell us the truth. You could turn on the nightly news and you'd get a Walter Cronkite who would tell you how it is. That's just the way it is. Now we're starting to see the cracks. And many of you have been seeing them for a couple of years. But they're going to see some cracks in people that you thought you could trust as well. Jake Tapper is not someone that I thought I could trust. Probably not someone you thought you could trust. You can go back into his history and find out that one of his breakout stories was going on a date with Monica Lewinsky, which is salacious and tabloid-like. How about Anderson Cooper? A former VJ on MTV is one of the big voices that is at CNN, the most trusted name in news. And he comes from a very wealthy, very well-connected family. Here's Jake Tapper. He's on the Washington Week, which is with The Atlantic. The Atlantic, which is famous for calling Catholics radical traditionalists and dangerous, and that the rosary and an AR-15 are the tools of resistance against government overreach. They're probably right. They thought it was a bad thing. They thought you should actually give in to the government. Here's Jake Tapper suddenly having this new dose of you should probably be skeptical. Maybe you shouldn't trust anybody. Welcome to the program, my friend. I don't think we should listen to you anymore, but this is not bad advice.
And I think that we need to be skeptical of everything that we are told by people in power. And I mean, that obviously should be the mantra of being a journalist to begin with. If your mother tells you she loves you, get a second source. Right. But we just need to remember that. Politicians lie. White Houses lie. Power is an aphrodisiac. And we just need to all remember that and not take at face value anything that we're told.
Okay, you don't want to take the fact that your mom loves you? That seems stupid, doesn't it? Is that hyperbole? Is that charming little hyperbole? How about you can take it to the bank that your mother loves you based on the things they do? Yesterday, I did a post And it was kind of flippant, but we were trying to put my daughter to sleep and she didn't want to go down. And so she's almost 2 years old. She's like 21 months or something. And I realized that if you're not a parent, if you've never been a parent, then you absolutely have no idea how much time your parents invested in trying to coax you into doing things that if you did not do, you would die. That's how you know your parents love you. And that's not everybody. Of course, there's some parents out there that did a terrible job of it, and some of you may have those stories. But that's not Jake Tapper's experience. He's well acclimated to the life that he lives, and he's a functional human being, and he made $7 million a year working for CNN, apparently. But just getting your kid to go to sleep, because they have to go to sleep. If they don't go to sleep, then they will actually die. Getting your child to put food in their mouth and eat, which your parents spent significant time and energy and emotional distress trying to accomplish. I promise you, everything that we do for our children that are just like the biggest and most draining chores on our life, all of those things are out there. They're evidence. So you can have evidence. You don't need two sources. You can actually have evidence. That's the other thing he forgot to mention. But he does seem to like slowly realize that, how about this for a second opinion? The people that you are working on behalf of hate you. They hate you, Jake Tapper, because you're a white guy who's married to a woman and you have children like a regular person for all of human history. It is the standard. Does that mean that there are some people that don't have children? Yes. Does it mean that there are some people that have non-traditional relationships? Of course. Does it make me instantly think that they're bad people? No, it does not. But we shouldn't ignore the standard. And that's the craziest thing about what today's Democrat Party has done. That's why they've gone after all these institutions. They want to undermine standards. They want to take all the faith in normalcy and pull it away. And here's Jake Tapper having that realization on like a little podcast interview that people hated him because his son is a football player and wants to become a police officer.
I went on a left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids because I think they were both people without kids. And they asked me about my son, and I said he was, he's a football player and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son, oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman, therefore he's racist, my son. And that was the big laugh. And then I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like my football playing son, who has no political views. He's 15. He thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop? He wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, and he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men, not just white men, but men. And I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could, what's the term he used? Code switch or something? He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt. But I find it just insane.
It is insane. And they've doubled down on this. And so the story came out in the New York Times. Again, they've undercut all credibility. And people have seen it. They don't want it. One longtime Democrat researcher has a technique that she leans on. Of course, it's a she. When she's nudging voters to share their deepest, darkest feelings about politics, she asks them to compare Americans' major parties to animals. Now, this researcher, Democratic researcher, goes by the name of Anat Shenker Osorio. Of course, it's a hyphenated last name. And of course, it's a non-indigenous name, at least the way that I would have grown up. I knew exactly 0 Anats growing up. And I knew 0 Shanat Osorios, just like none of you probably did either. So here she is. She took a focus group of swing voters, and a few patterns emerged. She asked Republicans or people to compare Republicans to animals and the same thing to Democrats. And Republicans were seen as apex predators like lions, tigers, sharks, beasts that would take what they want. We don't think that's actually true. If you actually sit and watch the Republican Party, they seem weak and pathetic. Democrats are typically tagged as tortoises, slugs, and sloths, slow, prodding, and passive. Amazing. That's actually a pretty good con job itself. But this is something they're trying to deal with right now. Because the fact of the matter is they're struggling with everything to try to categorize this loss in trust in institution. Both institutions have lost trust from any of us that are paying attention. We don't just want two sources, the way Jake Tapper said. We want evidence that they don't suck, and it is far, far about. Now, you are going to get this as being victory messaging. Here's Michael Knowles talking on Fox News about, the Democrats have straight lost. No, we all lost because a functional system means not that the government is the answer, like RFK just said, but that institutions actually do have credibility. There's a really important nature in institutions for us to have a stable society. And when you undermine them, it opens up rifts and opportunities. And I think that is where, whether that's the goal of quote unquote communism taking root, it's an opportunity in the chaos for more people to choose a side that is not going to be tradition, conservative, which is to say, like, it's worked this way for hundreds of years. Maybe we should continue doing it. Here's Michael Knowles, like, kind of preemptively calling victory. I got a problem with this too, because I don't think this is victorious. I think all of this is bad, and having a functional opposition party is really good for America. In fact, the more that we have conflicting ideas and we suss out the truth, the better off we're going to be. And that is the opposite of what we're doing right now. We're doing tribal, and we're all climbing into our little echo chambers.
The Democrats just can't help themselves. The Democrats are looking at this report out today in the New York Times, shows that nearly half the countries in the country are triple trending Republican. Basically, none are triple trending Democrat. They have lost the people. And rather than look in the mirror and say, maybe we need to offer people something different, they say, no, we just need to speak in a way that these dumb idiots can understand. You heard their line. They said, we're speaking in a way that's too professorial. No, the problem isn't the words you're using. It's that you're offering open borders and crime and men in the women's bathroom and all sorts of things that the people don't want. The people are smart enough, and they're smart enough to reject you at the polls.
He's not wrong at all. We're going to put the article up from the New York Times. I'll put an archive version for those of you who don't want to pay for it, which is all of us. I'll put that over at kyleseraphin.com. If you guys are following us right now, if you're watching the show live, I really would appreciate if you guys hit the thumbs up and did a like over on YouTube and on Rumble as well. If you're listening to us on either Apple or Spotify or iTunes or iHeartRadio, please give us a comment, give us a 5-star review if you're in the business of doing those things. I appreciate your time that it takes to go do that. And again, if you want to share the show very easily, it's kyleseraphinshow.com. A little bit of self-promo in there. We're gonna go to a sponsor read in a second here, and then I'm going to continue to show you, one, more evidence of these clowns going out there and beclowning themselves, which they can't help to do. They just do it every single time. But I also want to show you that it's not just on the left. It happens on both sides, and we're all guilty of it. And the danger is that you create opportunities where people can come in because of the way that they feel about all these problems. It's like, I can't trust anybody, but at least my neighbor's a nice person. And you're going to find out that may be real problematic for you. Before we do, if you can't see off screen, I'm drinking on one of my Patriot coolers right now. This is the 19-ounce coffee mug. It's got a handle. I actually didn't know I wanted a handle on a cup. I actually sort of hate handles right up until I have cups with handles, and I actually really like them. They're great when you're grabbing them in the car. These will all fit inside of your cup holders if you want to keep hot coffee hot, cold drinks cold. Great options from Patriot Coolers. Good American company out of Houston, Texas. Good people that care about things. They give money back to our troops. They help with veterans who have had either amputations or disabilities that have been generated from their time in the service. Helps them make their house more accessible. Use promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E, saves yourself 10%. It's the same deal they'll give to military veterans, by the way. You just don't have to put in your credentials. So use Kyle, K-Y-L-E. Let them know we sent you over there. Check them out. If you're in the market for like one of their hard coolers, if you want to keep something, keep your frozen groceries frozen, which my wife and I were having a conversation about yesterday. This is why we keep it in the back of our minivan at all times. We have one of their 50 quarts. They're a one-time investment. You're not buying like a cooler that's going to go on the back of a boat. I don't even get time on a boat or a jet ski, but if you wanted one, this is where you would go look for one. If you want to get a gift for somebody that has everything or is into RVing or outdooring and so on, check them out. They make a great addition to your elk camp or any of your hunting needs or any of your outdoor and sort of enjoyment of being very hot and wanting things to stay cold. PatriotCoolers.com. Again, that promo code is Kyle. I'm gonna show you this mashup. This was one mashup, and this is how we know that they're all on the same team. This is how we know that Jake Tapper, it's not about sources. It's about the evidence that we see with our eyes that you are obviously lying because someone gave you a script. There's no other way that 9 people independently arrived at the same exact expression telling us about something that happened. This is something that we covered last week. It's the South African president being in the White House. By the way, wouldn't you want a president who secretly does really good negotiating tactics or springs information on a foreign leader when they want to talk about something? Wouldn't you want them to, what do they say? You play the chess game instead of checkers. You actually set a trap where someone says something that's foolish and then you sucker them into it. You want them to have to face the truth, which is that something is going on in South Africa, which is really ugly. Or do you call it an ambush and call it something that is bad politics? They all came to the same exact conclusion. This is from Western Lensman. It's one of my favorite follows over on X.
The dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Next, another Oval Office meltdown. President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started...
It's a multimedia ambush. Nothing could have prepared him for this thing. I mean, isn't that just what statecraft is? Is that you come in with evidence and information, that you come in as a skeptic, and then the person says, well, I don't believe you. And you go, well, here's the evidence. Some people call it receipts. But historically, we just called it evidence. It's the thing that you bring forward. You say, I have Exhibit A. Oh, you don't believe me that that this person did this thing? Here's the security cam footage. Exhibit A. Here's the weapon that we found at his house. It's Exhibit B. Here's the shell casings with his fingerprints on them at the scene. That's Exhibit C. It's called evidence, historically. I don't know why you wouldn't want that to be done. I don't know why. And here's some evidence. Here's some evidence. What does all this have to do? It has to do with the fact that Americans, regular people, are now being affected by something that came from a loss in trust in our institutions. You heard Michael Knowles. He's not wrong saying that when the Democrat Party goes out and focuses on things that are so un-American, like how do we protect the South African president from the president of the United States when you're a freaking American? That seems crazy to me. It's truly new in this country in the last maybe 20 years to identify as the sympathetic figure as a not American. That is something that happened, I guess, with the disillusionment after maybe George W. Bush. Remember, he was the problem and the Iraqis were the good guys. He was the problem because of the global war on terror, and we were really the mean guys, and it was all about money, right up until the point when he hated Donald Trump, and so now he's the good guy again. There's no principles at all. And all that was spurred because I watched this freaking horrible story of a young girl who was killed in Texas at a lake that I used to go in. And she was on a kayak. Her name was Ava Moore. She's an 18-year-old girl. And she got hit with a jet ski. I've had a friend hit with a jet ski, by the way, when I was doing military training. And it was scary as hell. He was doing a subsurface combat swim and had a jet ski go right over the top and hit him. And it was like, it just clipped him just enough to knock his bell a little bit. This story is horrific. But the crazier thing to me is that you have an 18-year-old who was arrested, or two young women, I think she's 18, it's hard to say what the age is, who came in here from Venezuela, theoretically seeking a better life. And there's a current court case right now fighting the Trump administration who's trying to rescind temporary protected status, what's called TPS. And so they've got time to go out on jet skis. I don't have time for jet skis. I've got only time to raise my children, make sure that my household is good, make sure that I am mowing my lawn, meeting all my financial obligations, building up my safety cushion of $2,000 so I don't have to comply with things that I shouldn't, that I don't have to take money from somebody, which I wouldn't do anyway, but take money from someone that I don't agree with. We turned down yet another sponsor. Somebody wanted to sponsor the program, which I'm really grateful. It's so flattering. But they were looking to sell t-shirts and things for over $100. And it's like, well, that's not who I am. So I don't think that's who my audience is. Maybe you guys buy $100 t-shirts out there, but I don't think a lot of you do, at least not from what I've read. And I don't either. I wear $20 t-shirts and $15 t-shirts and $5 t-shirts if I can find them. I'll wear free t-shirts when my friends send them to me. That's what I wear. And this lady's out riding on a jet ski. Grapevine Lake must be nice. And the story is just catastrophic. And maybe the worst part was the local news version of how they covered the story. So this is an NBC affiliate locally talking about it. And it kind of makes me sick, to be fair. Listen to the way this reporter suddenly complies with the norm that we have to try to, properly pronounce this Hispanic name, this Spanish sounding name, so that we don't offend people. And that is the real issue for me. That's the capture. That shows me that you're not doing news. You're performing something. Listen to this craziness.
18-year-old Ava Moore was kayaking at Lake Grapevine when police say that she was struck and killed by a jet ski with 2 women on it. Authorities were looking for the driver of that jet ski, who they say fled the scene by jumping into a vehicle with a man at the park. As mentioned, we do know that police have Daikerlin Alejandra Gonzalez in custody, the suspect that they believe is tied to the death of Moore. Earlier today, I spoke to Ava's basketball coach at the Air Force Prep Academy and also one of her teammates. They say that she had just finished at the academy and was headed to basic training in a few weeks. They're obviously heartbroken by her death.
Yeah, they're heartbroken. Of course they are. Why would they? It's a horrific situation. Got an 18-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her. Turned out, by the way, she was a black young female. That doesn't matter that much to me, but it should matter to our friends on the left because that's what they told us is so important. So you have someone that came here illegally and killed one of the most, capable members of our future. She was out there getting herself better at the Colorado Air Force Academy prep school. She wanted to go into the military. I don't agree with what the coach says. And I'm also a little bit confused because this story, and I've seen it covered in multiple places, it is kind of a local news story at the end of the day. And I do live in Texas. But isn't it interesting that the person that is talking about this young gal is her basketball coach? My wife and I were trying to figure out what that was about. One possibility is that her parents aren't around, which means that the institution of family has been disrupted. The other possibility is that you're a person that is related to a family member and you go out and you speak out against illegal aliens or a protected group that has done some horrible thing to your family member, then you get attacked and you're the problem and you have to be canceled. And people don't want that. This girl, I don't think she was going to be a general, just because I know what the military is. And I don't necessarily even think most women should be in the military. You guys, we can disagree about that, but that's just been my experience. I was in a male-only career field, and I think that's right. But I would say that somebody who has that instinct towards service is not a problem in this country. They are the thing that we should be celebrating. And instead, the people on the political left have celebrated illegal aliens, open borders, again, men and women's bathrooms, etc. They've picked the crazy side. So they're destroying the institution of a political opposition that should be just reasonable people trying to come to the middle, the same way we did in the 1990s. This is 25 years ago. It wasn't crazy that if this happened, there would have been an outrage across the board nationwide. This would have been insanity. Here's what it sounds like.
Ava was exactly what our United States military needed.
Ava Moore, 18 years old, dreamt of joining the U.S. military.
We talked throughout the course of the year that at some point in her career, she was going to be a 4-star general because she loved it.
Keisha Blanton, Moore's basketball coach at the United States Air Force Academy Preparatory School in Colorado this past season.
She made those around her better.
Those around her, however, now mourn her. Moore was kayaking on Grapevine Lake Sunday when authorities say Moore was hit by a jet ski and killed. The driver of the jet ski fled.
You go between sadness for Ava and then anger that they left her, anger that they didn't try to help her.
Monday, Texas game wardens released this photo of the woman they say was driving the jet ski. Game wardens say she fled with a man, and they struck a vehicle while leaving the lake. Grapevine Police Department investigating that second hit-and-run crash.
They took a bright star from our lives.
Coach Blanton says Moore, who was just weeks away from heading to basic training, was visiting her parents who live in North Texas for Memorial Day weekend.
Everybody's going to be saluting you.
Coach Blanton says she had a FaceTime call with Moore the day before the crash.
All right. And so here's the illegal alien from Venezuela that's involved in the crash. Tragic situation, tragic capability. It's a tragic, loss for America because someone who had the right idea, who took the idea that America is a place worth serving, like many of you did in any capacity. And she's gone by this entitled sort of idea that you would come into this country and that you have time for leisure when you are that age. That you have time for makeup and fancier swimsuits than my wife is going to be able to, spend money on. And then you got people on the political left that are out there trying to cover for it. And so this story, Venezuelans, they're in the United States legally, but the Supreme Court's order on TPS is upending their lives. We're upending these poor people's lives that came here just seeking a better life. There should be exactly 0 crimes committed by people that are on borrowed time because they left a communist and or socialist country that has been trending down the toilet since 1999 with Hugo Chavez. And you can track it back for 26 years. What's amazing is if you go back and look, there's approximately 1 million Venezuelans in the United States right now in various legal and illegal statuses. It's probably more than that because we don't know how many illegals are here. And we saw a huge number come in under the Biden administration. The vast majority, like 75+% of these people came in after 2010. And some of them are here legally, for sure, under this temporary protected status. You know what the thing about I read about when I see something called TPS, temporary protected status? I focus in on one thing because I'm a person that likes evidence. I like to hear words. I like to see something that makes sense. And that word is temporary. That doesn't mean you are legally permanently here. Doesn't mean that you became an American. It means that you are a foreign person. You are in my country by the grace of God. And we have decided to give you a reprieve from whatever's going on. And your goal should be to go back to your own country and fix it. And instead, you're hanging out here on jet skis and you're killing a girl who's 18 years old who was in a kayak and you're abandoning her. Imagine if that person hit somebody, rendered aid, saved her life after almost killing her. We'd be like, at least they have the right values. The values are that a human life is valuable. It is not valuable in other places. I look at people and I consider them exactly for how much value they put into the human lives around them. The State Department just told you that you shouldn't go to Venezuela because Venezuela is the single biggest captor illegally of American citizens abroad. And so there's now a danger and a warning label put out on travel to Venezuela. And these are the people that we have 1 million of them. 1 in 300 and something people in this country are Venezuelan. That's kind of interesting. Does it mean every single person there has adopted the values of this like lousy human being that decided to kill somebody with a jet ski? No. But should we even have one person whose candle is snuffed out because some a-hole decided to get on a jet ski and doesn't care and apparently we're out drunk and hit a car on the way out? Destructive forces? Here's the State Department warning, by the way. Again, evidence. Don't trust me.
The State Department issued a security alert warning Americans against travel to Venezuela and bordering areas for any reason. Americans who travel to Venezuela or nearby border regions risk being wrongfully detained in prison for months or even years. I cannot emphasize enough the gravity of this warning. More U.S. nationals are currently wrongfully detained in Venezuela than in any other country. President Trump has obtained freedom for several Americans wrongfully detained in Venezuela since taking office, most recently last week. And we continue to do everything we can to secure the freedom of the remaining Americans wrongfully detained in Venezuela. We need to ensure that no additional Americans are falling into this trap. Our simple message for Americans: do not travel to Venezuela. The Secretary's highest priority is the safety and security of the American people.
When was the last time you heard someone say that the highest priority of the United States government was the safety and security of the American people? That is a kind of a novel and welcome change. That's the default setting that we would believe that our government has. And we haven't seen that in a while. By the way, here's just another bit of evidence. This is coming from ABC News reporting. There are more U.S. citizens being held in prisons in Venezuela than any other country, says Trump's special envoy for hostage recovery. That's Adam Bowler. These people did not do anything wrong. Their only issue is that they are American. Venezuela takes more Americans into custody than any other country for that sole reason. And we have, 1 million people here from that country. Some of whom I know, by the way. I know some people that have Venezuelan backgrounds. It turns out they came here legally. And it turns out the people that are here temporarily, it should be temporary. Maybe we hold them to that. Wouldn't that be nice? We're seeing a capture of these institutions. That's what weaponized government is, folks. That's what the entire reason that I'm sitting here at a podcast desk and not doing the job I used to do. Weaponized government is one that favors outcomes over process, and it decides that it's going to enact its own agenda, and it's going to just divorce itself from the actual purpose. That the task is the reason that it does it, not the purpose that was originally attached to it. It is a mission that has forgotten the goal that it is supposed to accomplish. That seems really sad to me. And again, I can't get over this one. There's another story that I didn't put up on the headline here, but I'm going to tell you this one because just reading it, when it popped up in my feed, I thought, like, how on God's green earth is this possible? Body cam footage shows a 19-year-old was killed in a shooting involving a deputy. The 19-year-old was armed. His name was Janidi Ibrahim. And you go, okay, who was this guy? First of all, he's underage, which for whatever is worth, you have to be 21 to be able to possess a handgun in the United States, to buy one. He was a Somali refugee in this country, and he was here specifically because of the problems that exist in his own country. He had a stolen handgun that was equipped with a tactical flashlight. He pointed it at a Douglas County sheriff's deputy. And I thought, well, where in the hell is Douglas County that we have this refugee from Somalia? Must be in Minnesota, because that's where I know where all the Somalis are. No, he's in Nebraska. It's in the outskirts around Omaha. So here's the local news story there. The deputies had to shoot this person, which means that deputy is now going to carry this burden forever because you imported somebody who doesn't have American values. And the craziest thing is that this guy, this 19-year-old kid with the gun, had his father visiting on vacation from Somalia, which means that you can safely go back there. This is the story. I mean, like I said, this is a local news story, but should we have any of these stories?
Good afternoon. Police are looking to learn more after a Douglas County deputy shot and killed the subject of an ongoing investigation early this morning.
This was near 48th and Pratt, where deputies were following up on a firearms case. Investigators say they spoke to the group inside an SUV and people started running away. Some of the people in the car ran from the scene. One person stayed in the driver's seat.
At some point, shots were fired, and the individual identified as Janidi Ibrahim was struck by that gunfire. The shots were fired by the deputy for the Douglas County Sheriff's Office.
Janidi Ibrahim is 19. He died at the hospital. First Alert 6 reporter John Chapman tells us right now law enforcement officials are in the fact-gathering stage.
Douglas County investigators on scene for hours, collecting evidence inside the yellow tape.
All right. So they're gathering facts about a Somali man who's a refugee. All of this undermining of our public institutions, all this undermining of the credibility of things that we used to be able to trust, government, medical establishment, news media, it all leads to people not believing in anything. They become either skeptics, where they ask all the questions, or they believe in stupidity, like communism or anarchy or whatever other angry young people do. And this does seem like a struggle between sort of how do the communists versus the American values, how do they play out? And you can see how well it works in places where the communist leaders, for example, Karen Bass, who is now who was in Congress and was a legit avowed communist who spent time training in Cuba. We've covered her before. She's now the mayor of Los Angeles, what used to be one of the great American cities. I swear, I want to say it was Mark Twain who said it. But when he talked about what the cities were of the United States that people would think of, right? And it might, now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been Oscar Wilde. New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Those were the big ones. They're the coast cities. Now you've got places like Miami that have popped up and people think of in Atlanta and Dallas and so on. But if you were going to go back 100 years ago, people would have known the big port cities and Chicago. And so what are the great American cities? And it's unique in its own way. And Los Angeles is a beautiful place to live. At least it used to be. And it's not a place that I would want to be right now, but everybody wanted to go and live in Southern California. The Beach Boys were popular because of the ideology that Southern California was it. That was the apex of American leisure and work and family values and all the good things that were out there. There was a beautiful sunshine and there were beaches and there were mountains and they had all the things. If you were successful, you went there because you could. Think about how much money is there. And then you got these idiots running around through the city, destroying what used to be a really, really cool place. I saw a video yesterday showing that Aliotos, which is in San Francisco, it's out on the water. I used to live at Stockton and Bay, right next to Pier 39, right next to Fisherman's Wharf. And they've shut it down. It opened in 1925. Like all these beautiful places that existed. Institutions, wouldn't you say? A restaurant that's been open for 100 years, it's shuttered now because of horrible policies, because they've destroyed the things that we used to be able to believe in. And they did it with stuff like this, allowing this sort of like reckless lawlessness. Watch this crazy video. Like, this is hard to take in too. This is Los Angeles.
What was captured on video over the weekend, people targeting stores, metro trains, and police cars with graffiti and vandalism, is just the latest act of chaos that's been going on for months. He says about 15 to 20 underground parties happen every weekend, with police and businesses struggling to keep track.
We have underage drinking. We have violence coming out of these. There's nothing positive that comes out of this.
The LAPD says more than 1,000 people spilled onto the streets after an underground party Saturday night. About 50 of them vandalizing and blocking 2 Metro Line A trains at the corner of Washington and Maple. The police response was met with more vandalism and someone throwing a firework at a patrol unit. The LAPD says one officer required medical attention after getting hit with a bottle.
I want to know how many of the individuals were identified. I want to know who will be arrested and when.
No one was arrested at the scene, but LA Mayor Karen Bass says the LAPD and District Attorney's Office will be looking at the videos to find those responsible. Rodriguez says the city needs to go a step further and hold responsible those who are allowing the underground parties to happen.
Not one party promoter, not any person granting access to a space to be used has been held accountable for these parties. If LA really wants to revitalize downtown LA and bring it back to what it was before the pandemic, this needs to be addressed.
Import the third world, import communists from countries that don't share American values, and you get those things. You get them here. We keep seeing it. And you know what else we imported? We actually imported the propaganda ministries like they had in the Soviet Union. We've actually got state-run media doing the exact worst. And maybe the worst single part of it is that there's a blatant attempt to criminalize the one thing that Americans have always held most dear. Why? Because it's the First Amendment. Our ability to celebrate our religion, our ability to gather together and petition for a redress of grievances against our government, and our ability to speak, to do what I'm doing right now and say, these are problems I see. I got an issue with them. I maybe have a solution, or maybe I'm looking for you to help me find a solution. I'm going to say what I see, and we're going to try to shut that thing down. And there's a couple of different interesting laboratories that are happening where that happens. And by the way, that totalitarian speech crushing is also an import from sort of these communist type countries. For all the craziness of the left claiming that Donald Trump is Hitler and that we're dealing with fascism on the right, it's always the left that brings this stuff in. And that is another, just a failure between propaganda and then shutting down opposition. You're going to end up exactly what you imported in here. You're going to see, those people are going to feel right at home and theoretically get the thing they just ran away from. This is a little piece from Heritage Foundation talking about what happened in this unconstitutional law that just got signed into law in Colorado. By the way, Texas has done a very similar thing. Owen Schroyer did a good piece on he got Taylor Loren to show up on his show yesterday to talk about the exact same thing, that Texas wants to have the so-called take it down bill, where they're going to censor like memery and AI effigies of people. Colorado has already they're ahead of the curve. They've already made this thing happen. So you tell me, what are we importing here?
The state of Colorado, I think, believes that they are sort of operating a Manchurian candidate experiment in the state of Colorado, because they can't seem to get the balance between free speech and religious liberty versus anti-discrimination law twice. So they've just enacted a new law, and Governor Polis signed it going into the weekend. HB 1312 is actually a modification of, it's an amendment to the pre-existing Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, or CADA. Now, CADA notably has made 2 trips to the Supreme Court already. One in the Masterpiece Cake Shop series of cases with Jack Phillips, and one in last year's 303 Creative versus Alenis case, which was Lori Smith, the Christian website designer. So both times, both were victors at the Supreme Court over the Colorado Human Rights Commission, but Colorado can't seem to get the message. So what this amendment does is it actually requires any individual in a public accommodation space to use mandatory preferred pronouns and selected names of individuals based on gender identity, even if those individuals disagree with the communication of a message that is antithetical to what they believe.
We're talking about compelled speech. This is the entirety that happened. This is what Jordan Peterson got famous for opposing in Canada. It's the reason why you know Jordan Peterson's name, because he was just an obscure college professor who started speaking out about compelled speech and compelled pronouns and saying that someone must be addressed in the way that they choose. There's nothing American about that. There's nothing constitutional about it. It's crazy. But there's all these little laboratories testing out this stuff, and they all do the same thing. They discredit the institutions that you used to believe, that you used to think were sacrosanct, and they come and attack them. And it leaves open the opportunity for something ugly to either take root or something ugly to fester, like you just saw in Los Angeles. And by the way, we've seen that in Chicago. We've seen it in Minneapolis. We've seen it in Portland. We've seen it in Seattle. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in Dallas. We've seen it in Atlanta. It's all over the place. All of the urban areas, there is a space for this evil to just take root. And God forbid you call something out. I'm going to show you one more thing that really upset me because I saw this first thing this morning. Some of you were telling me Steve Bannon's on board with me now and saying that the FBI should be demolished and is calling it out. Look, better late than never. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have early adopters out there calling out the problems, saying, by the way, I'm seeing this. It is uncomfortable. I am a noticer of trends. One of the trends that I notice is a lady named Julie Kelly who makes it on Bannon's Warroom all the time. And she's been a nonstop governmental apologist, not because the government is fixed, but because her people are in it. Her buddies are in it. One of the great things to do is to get a couple of little bellwethers, things that are indicators of how people think, how people are paying attention. And one thing that people across this country, whether they're on the left or the right, think is really wrong is the abuse of kids by elite pedophiles, people who have tons of money and think that they are above the law. And we have associated that with a guy named Jeffrey Epstein and the black book of all of his clients. Again, it doesn't matter who you talk about. Like, everybody thinks that what those people did was evil. Except Julie Kelly. She's not interested. And how dare you? Because that information is irrelevant. And so she's done with it. There's no reason to pursue Epstein stuff. Does this not tell you that we are lost in some ways? That we have institutional capture? That we're never going to see this stuff? Because this is the unofficial propaganda secretary of our current DOJ and FBI speaking out. Check this out.
I also don't care about the Epstein information. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant. No one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. And I would much rather dig into January 6th, much rather dig into.
Like that. You've got to get, no.
I just have never cared about it personally.
Because in the files, you're going to find out the I know, but but I'm saying it's you'll get to the cover up of exactly what the cover-up was. They're even admitting they got these tapes and things. This is Cash and Pam. You got to get it. Once you get into these things, they're rich. As you know, Julie, you've done it yourself with no resource at all, just doing it yourself. You understand as you start these investigations, every day you're telling me, hey, I found this, I found this. The process itself delivers. Once you have intention.
No, Bannon. Stop telling her what she doesn't believe. She doesn't believe that. She says it's irrelevant.
I also don't care about the Epstein information. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant. No one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. And I would much rather dig into January 6th, much rather dig in.
That, for me, is an admission coming from our current DOJ that just wait, because that's the precursor. That's how you test out the idea. And we saw this happen in a lot of different places. Somebody says it. Gets a little bit of ground. We put it in your brain. Even if you didn't like it, and you get used to hearing it, they desensitize you with that information. That's what it is. Move on, people. It's all over there. That, to me, is a real problem, because that's theoretically people on the political right. We could have our arguments about that as well another time. I'm going to give you one last thing as a palate cleanse, because I don't want to leave you with that. Again, before we go over to that, let's just say, if you're watching the program, we do appreciate you. It's a one-man show. You guys have seen what it looks like. If you're on Rumble, give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you've never joined one of the live programs, do it. It's fun. It's pretty neat. Same thing. Our YouTube continues to grow. We've been doing a great month over there, and it's because all of you that have logged in. YouTube.com/@Kyle Seraphin to find the upcoming shows. Our locals, where I put out the links to all the shows. If you guys want to read any of the stories that we reference here for yourself, by all means, it's KyleSeraphin.com. You don't have to be a paid subscriber to do that. You just have to sign in there and check them out from the most recent show. And on Spotify, if you want to share it with a friend, it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's always Kyle Seraphin places. It's very easy to do. You guys can go and check those things out. And again, thanks for all of you that are on the live chat. If you're watching right now, you're seeing your name come across the screen. That's because I see you guys sitting and chatting it up as we go forward. I appreciate all of you. Let me give you something about hope, because there is an answer to this. And the answer is, do not ever accept things that are falsehoods. Do not let them come out of your mouth. This is Nick Freitas. He's a Green Beret. He was a member in Virginia in their House of Representatives. He's one of my favorite commentators because he's snarky the way that I am. He comes from a background of like actual masculinity and doing hard things. And this is the way. We used to be able to make peace with evil. You can't make peace with evil. You cannot accept it. You cannot allow it to pass from your lips. You cannot say things that are false. That's something, we're in a time right now when there is no room for that. So this is a little short thing. This is a palate cleanse for you, and hopefully a little bit of inspiring as you go out in the world and people say things that are inaccurate or untrue. Don't accept it. You mustn't.
One of the things I feel most guilty about is talking to students about 10 years ago. And I said, look, I get it. You're in a college environment. Sometimes you're going to have professors that they want to see a certain thing on the paper. And you just got to kind of, hey, do what you need to do, get your grade, get out into the real life, and then do the right thing. I will never tell anyone that ever again, because that sort of cowardice is what got us into the situation that we find ourselves now. Once you start acclimating yourself to the idea that you have to either be silent about the truth or openly speak a lie in order to get by within your society, you no longer live in a society worthy of the very truth that you believe in. Truth requires advocates. It requires people who are going to stand up for it, even if it's going to cost you something in the process. One of the things I feel most guilty about is talking to students about 10 years ago. And I said, look, I get it. You're in a college environment. Sometimes you're going to have professors that they want to see a certain thing on the paper. And you just...
I wanted you to go back to the thing just so you understood what the context of it was. You can't make peace with evil. There are no practice cuts. There's no do-overs. If you're out in the world and you're outside of your own home, it's game on all the time now. That's what they did. That's what these people did. They made everywhere you go, it's part of the battlefield. It's at the playground when you're hanging out with your kids. It's on the phone with your family who's not inside your house. It's when you're at work talking to your colleagues. You can't accept lies, and it's going to cost you. There's no bravery without cost on the other end of it. So that's my inspiration. Like, that's my message to you guys as we go into this Wednesday. And it's a good message on a week where we celebrated those who died, even if it was for a lie, why we were there. The reasons that they believed in, the reason that they signed up and decided to serve in our military were not. The things that they held true, like the values and the ideals. We gotta take the country back by living it in our own lives. Everybody wants to know what they can do. You can do that. You can speak the truth, no matter what. And it's not convenient. It's not supposed to be. In any case, at the end of the day, if you're a Christian, you realize you don't have to win here on earth for it to be a win. That's the revolutionary piece of this Christian nation, which is that it all can be a loss and still be a win at the end. So there you have it. I hope you guys have a fantastic day as you go off in there. I know it's a little bit heavy, but also I think it's necessary as we continue to see these things. I don't want to black pill people. Actually, there's a lot of hope in this message because there is an action item and it's going out and speaking accurately. We'll see you again tomorrow, 09:30 Eastern time here on the Kyle Seraphin Show if you want to watch us live. Otherwise, listen on any of the venues. Make sure you share it with a friend. We do appreciate that. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Go have a great Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.